All right, so in this video, I'm going to show you the propaganda strategy that gets qualified window replacement leads, right? So this is actually one of the most powerful strategies that you can use to get leads and sales for your business, for your window replacement business, right? And the good thing about it is like a lot of companies haven't clued in on this, right? So then you have an advantage. It's the same strategy that I use to get leads for our partners. So we've generated over 1,000 leads in the last month alone. All right. And I'm going to show you how this is done, and then why the biggest companies in the world do this, and and how we can actually implement this and then get qualified leads as well. Right. So let's get started. So what does propaganda really mean? Right. When you hear propaganda, you kind of think negative manipulation, because you've probably seen that with government or sketchy governments trying to do things that are people that people don't, that are not in the best interest of people. Exactly. But what basically propaganda means is just repeated messaging that shapes belief over time, right? And basically every major brand does this. Coca-Cola doesn't run one ad, they run thousands with the same core message. Nike has been doing this for like over 35 years. They just do it. It's ingrained in our psyche, right? So we should be able to take advantage of this time tested strategy that the biggest companies have been using. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing it, right? So the problem is most window companies are running the same direct response aggressive ads. Save $500 on your windows right now, get a quote, 0% down now, and then pay $97 a month or something like that. This will get you buyers, but it will get you the wrong set of people, right? You probably notice that sometimes the biggest headache clients are the ones that are responding to this kind of messaging, right? So let's flip the script, right? But then before we do that, let me explain to you what I call the iceberg effect and the reason why this is so powerful, why the propaganda messaging works, right? So only 3% of your audience, of people that actually want to replace Windows, are active in the market right now. And what do I mean by active? I mean like they are raising their hand to say, you know what, I want to have my Windows replaced, right? So they actually visibly searching, and people know that. And that's how a lot of companies are targeting these on Google Ads, because Google Ads is more of like a search intent platform. And again, rightly so, they are the best intent leads, but they are also the most expensive, right? That have been targeted by lead aggregators. That's why you get a lot of repeated leads, like duplicate leads, because they're searching multiple times on these platforms, right? But then if you look at an iceberg, right, what you see at the top right here is basically just the 3%. 3%, there's this whole massive expanse of ice under the water that is just there waiting to be activated, right? And those are the people that we actually want to go target, right? There's this other 97 people that are really untapped. And the cool thing about it is that they are not being bombarded with messages from 5 to 6 other companies, at least not yet, right? They're still in that mode where we can actually have what we call the monopoly of influence, right? So what do we do with this 97%, right? So let me explain to you what I mean by the monopoly of influence. So like when we were born, right? So our parents had the most of influence in the earlier part of our lives, right? So they were the people that actually shaped, how we grew up, what we thought, or what our beliefs, or what we thought was right and wrong, until we actually grew up and then found out that that there's this whole expanse of others, like maybe that from celebrities, music videos, or TV, that there's this whole world out there where we can actually gain knowledge from, right? But then still, whatever the parents actually taught was actually what shaped you up until today as well too, right? So we can actually do the same thing with these leads, right? We can have the same or how would I say, like the same monopoly of influence with the 97%, right? So how do we do that? So what we do is we just basically deploy what we call the trust multiplier content strategy, right? it is what we call, it is basically education on steroids, right? So we deploy a series of 20 to 30 videos out there on social media that is educating clients, right? Potential clients. So we've done this in different niches, right? We've done it in the window replacement niche as well too, where we are actually explaining, how to get the best out of window replacement. This is actually examples of content that we have in there. So what we do is we deploy value dense content. So what underpins this whole idea is that if you give value, right? So people have that, and there's this law of reciprocity, right? So where you give value, people actually want to get value back, right? They want to give something back in return. It could either be with their attention, which is actually the first part, or with actually giving you like a contract to actually sign, right? So we take them through different stages. They have the awareness stage, the consideration stage, the decision stage. So we have videos that are targeting multiple stages, but then this is just some ideas, right? So for example, 5 signs it's time to replace your windows. Most people miss number 3. That's a hook right there, right? It basically just grabs them thinking, what is number 3? Why are people missing this, right? Then they get to watch the video and then they get activated, right? That's one of the videos that we actually call a Trojan horse video. I'm going to show in another video how the Trojan horse video actually activates clients that are in that early awareness stage, and then we can bring them up onto the decision stage and then have them as a client, right? So things like what new windows actually cost in your city. People want to know how much windows cost, right? So if they're in the consideration stage, we're thinking of how to spot a bad window installation, how we protect your home during installation. Homeowners are terrified of having damage to their homes, for example, right? So imagine this kind of content, like 20-30 of them, all as videos. As I said, we implement them as videos. We actually do emails and blog posts, but that's also on the back end of the funnel. I'm going to have another video that explains that as well too, but for now these are just videos because that's actually the best way to disseminate information on social media right now, right? So how do we deploy that? So we deploy that using this funnel. So this funnel here is what we call the retargeting funnel. So we track how much of a video people have watched online. So the Trojan horse video, which is the first video in the series, we actually track how much people have watched. If they've seen 95% of the video, or they've actually visited the site, they've come to the website and the quiz and actually filled the form, then we put them in an audience, right? So we kind of have about 2,000 people in an audience. It's actually easy to get 2,000 people in an audience, right? Because the cost per 1,000 views, right, on these platforms is relatively cheap, right? But then this is the 97% of people that we're talking about. Then we start nurturing them. Then we can now retarget them with more and more and more videos. So imagine they start seeing maybe 3-4 videos every day over the span of 20-30 days, right? So we can actually take someone from awareness through consideration through to decision in a span of 10, 20, 30 days easily, because we are actually having that monopoly of influence, right? So most of the time the videos that they are seeing are only our videos, right? Because one, other people haven't clued in on it. Other window companies are actually running just 1 ad, 2, 3 maximum, but we're there running 30 ads, right? So that's how we deploy this. So that's how to get that monopoly of influence, to use the propaganda strategy to get qualified window replacement leads. It's relatively simple. If your lead vendor is not implementing this, let them know, send them this video, or you can give us a call. Book a call in the description below. We have a link in the description below where you can actually speak to us, and then we can bring you on as a partner. Love to speak to you. But for now, hope you got value from this video, and then we'll see you in the next one. All right.